y'all and welcome back. So today we are doing beef tallow. We are rendering it down from the beef fat itself. So I went to my butcher and got 5 pounds of beef fat, and they just put it in a thing. It comes all like big chunks and everything. So we will be running it through the food processor to get it down. If you don't have a food processor, you could put it through a meat grinder, or if you don't have either of those, you can just chop it up as finely as you can. This is all I have left of my beef fat that I did last time. So, and I did this in September of 23. I did 10 pounds, and that's all that I have left. So we're gonna get this done so that we can be cooking with it again. So let's get this turned around and I can show you how I run it through the food processor, and then we'll get to the next part. Okay, so here's all the trimmings and everything that we have. We've got a knife so that we can make sure that can fit through our little hole here at the top of the food processor. And this is what I've done already. So you can see it comes out pretty small, and that's what we want. The smaller it is, the easier it is to cook down. So that's what we're working on. So this is my Ninja food processor. So I'm going to turn it on, and then I'm going to hit puree, and then we're just going to drop them through the top. We'll let it get, I don't know, about 6 cups or so, then we'll dump it out and redo it. So it definitely takes a little bit of time, but I don't like cutting it by hand, and I don't have a grinder, so this is the best way I found to do it. So here we go. Okay, so now we have all of our fat ground up, so I'm actually going to wait till tomorrow because it's super windy outside. I do not cook this in the house. I do not cook it down in the house. It definitely has a beefy smell that permeates quickly and strongly, so I don't do it in the house. You can, and your beef fat may be different. So this, I believe this is all grass-fed, so it tends to have a little bit more of a smell. To each your own. I do mine either outside or in the garage. Today is super windy, so I will probably do it tomorrow or the next day. So I'm just going to put this into the fridge for now. I will be doing it in the Instant Pot. So the fat, when I put it through the food processor, is half frozen. I do that way because it doesn't make as much of a mess in the food processor that way. Obviously the hotter it gets, the more it melts and the more greasy or more problems that it tends to have. So I found if you do it about half frozen, it cuts really well and you don't have as much of a mess. This is my 4th time, I believe, doing this. So I've got a pretty good system down. I love using the food processor. It gets it really thin, really small holes, or small granule size, which makes it a lot faster for cooking down. So I do like that. I'm sure if you have a meat grinder, it does really good as well, but I don't have one of those. So I'm gonna put this stuff into the fridge and we will be back in a few days, or maybe even tomorrow. I'm not sure yet. And we'll get this put into the Instant Pot. All right, so we're back. We're going to start the beef tallow rendering down. I've got my Instant Pot set up outside on the picnic table, so let's head out there and start it. It is freezing cold outside, which is why I've got my jacket on. So I'm gonna do a little bit of the talking in here so I don't have to have my hands out there. So you want to render the beef tallow down at 250 degrees. I started out a little bit lower. I started about 200 just to get some of the liquid at the bottom. That way it doesn't like start crisping and cooking instead of just melting. So we started about 200. We start melting it down. Once you get a little bit of liquid at the bottom, then you can add a little bit more in. And I'll show you how much I put in. And then once you get a good amount at the bottom, then we'll put more in and we'll crank it up to the 250 and just let it sit. It should take somewhere around like 3 or 4 hours, I think. I'm not completely sure. Last time I did this, I did 10 pounds and I did it in one of those big turkey roasters like you would use for Thanksgiving. So I'm doing quite a bit less, but I'm doing it in the Instant Pot, so it's going to be a completely different time frame and everything. So I have seen people do this in like a slow cooker or even on the stove. So whatever works for you, that's great. So this is just how I like to do it. Keeps the smell outside, keeps everything outside, and you don't really have to worry about any of that. And especially with the Instant Pot I have, you can set it to any temperature you want with no pressure. So that just makes it a lot easier. So I have the Instant Pot Ultra, which you'll see, and it just works out really well for me. So let's head out there and see what's going on. Alright, we are still at the 200 temperature. I've just got it set for 6 hours. I don't know that it's going to take that long. We do have a good amount in here now, and we've got some good fat melting at the bottom. So we're just going to go ahead and pour in the rest of the fat from the big bucket. I'm sure it's going to be way more than this, so we'll just put in a good amount and then we'll come back out later and put more in. So let's get that done. Alright, so we got all of it put in. The pot is pretty darn full. So we'll come out in a little bit with a metal spoon and stir this up. But basically, we just let it sit now. I'm going to turn it up to the 250. And we just let it sit and let it melt away. Okay, so it is pretty windy outside, so I'm not worried about bugs or flies or anything. If you're doing this outside and it's not windy and it is warm, I would definitely put like a splatter screen cover over it. I've done this before and there was a lot of bugs, so I had to put a screen over it. I'm not worried about that today. It is very cold outside and it's pretty windy, but just something to keep in mind. Now, there is a few different ways to do this. There's a water render or a plain render. So this is the just regular render. I'm not using any water. you would use water if you didn't want the beefy smell or taste. I'm only using this to cook with, so I really don't care about that, especially because it will be used to cook beef, so I'm not worried about that. But if you did want to use it for lotions or whatever else that you can make with it, you would want to render it with water, which will help pull out all of that smell and taste. And then you would render it again with water and then again without water to get all of that water out. Like I said, I'm just using this for cooking, so I'm not worried about any of that. But if you are, then make sure that you look into how to do it that way. I just found out that my Instant Pot only goes up to 208 degrees. It doesn't go any higher. So that's what it's going to be at for now. I may look in to see how hot the sear or the browning function is, and I might move over to that. But it does seem to be doing really well as it is, so I'm not going to mess with it too much. It'll probably just take a little bit longer, but I'm not too worried about it. I started it pretty early. It is only 10:45, so I've got all day, so I'm not too worried about how long it's going to take. Like I said earlier, the last time I did this was September of 2023. It is now April of 2025. So I just put it into pint jars, which you'll see later. We'll clean them up really good, sanitize them, and then we will fill them hot, and we will put the lids on, and you do not need to process it after that. So once it's in the jar and the lids are on, as long as you do it straight out of the heat, you do not have to process it. So you just put the lids on, you let it cool. It will cool hard and solid. But you want to make sure that there's absolutely no water in it. So at the end of the processing, we will bring it up to a high boil, like higher than what water is. So I'll have to look up the exact temperature, but I believe it's like 350 or so that we'll get it up to. And we'll just make sure that there's no water in it, so it won't pop or fizzle or anything at that high temperature, and then you know that there's no water in it. So then that's when you will strain it and process it and put it into your jars. You'll wipe the rims and put the lids on and let it cool. It does have a fantastic shelf life. Like I said, the one that I've just finished is from September of 2023. I do not put them in the refrigerator. I do not do anything special. I put them on the shelf. When I need them, I take them out and I leave the one in here, stays on the stove, and the one outside with my Blackstone griddle will stay at the griddle. I don't do anything special. It does not go bad. There's no weird smell or taste. It's perfect. So I will see you guys back in a couple of hours when we go out and check on that. We'll see you then. Alright, we're 2.5 hours in. It's gone down quite a bit. You can tell there's a lot of liquid in here, but we're still gonna keep letting it go. Okay, we are outside again. Things got a little bit away from us yesterday. The Instant Pot actually got unplugged for a little bit. We're not even sure how long, so things just kind of got in the way a little bit. So we're back out here today. Last night when I brought it in, I strained out all of the pieces. I'll show you a picture here. So I put it in this flour towel right here. It's the same thing I use to strain yogurt and stuff. So I just lined a bowl with the flour towel, poured it all out, and strained out the pieces. So that's, you can see that. So today we've got just what's been strained out. We're going to put that back in the Instant Pot. We're going to put it up on high heat to get all of the water out, because you'll see it's not as hard as we want it. And then once that is done, then we can put it into jars. So let's get this flipped around. Okay, back out here at Instant Pot. It's pretty hard, but it's not quite what we want, and we want to get some of this out of it. So that's why we strain it through that, and we will be straining it double when we put it into our jars. So let's get all of this put back into here and get it turned up. Okay, so I got this piece cut off and you can see that there's this yellow at the bottom. That is all water. So we want to make sure that we get that off. And of course it's all this discolored. We don't want any of that. So we're going to make sure that all of that comes off and it does not go into this next batch. Okay, so we've got all of the collagen liquid off the bottom of the fat and all the fats in here. I do have this on saute, and then I go to custom. So it's on saute, and then I went to custom, not that you guys can see that. Went to custom and I changed it to 290 degrees. So if you're doing it on an Instant Pot Ultra, you can go to saute and change it over the 208 that the Ultra lets you do. So I'm at 290. We're getting this up to temperature, but you can see all of these bubbles. That means that there is water in it, and that's what we don't want. So we're gonna let this boil until it's literally super hot, but it's not making any bubbles. So it melts up really quickly. It's not even to the 290 degrees yet, but any of the spitting or spattering or whatever, you don't want that. That just means that there is water in it, and that's what we're trying to get all out before we put it into our jars to make it shelf stable. Alright, we're still not even to the 290, and it's making all kinds of noise. It's still making all kinds of bubbles. So this may be a process. So all of this foam on the top, that's more of that collagen that was in the middle of the fat. So it wasn't easy to get out, so I just left it there. I knew it would come off when we strain it through the towel one more time, and I can get it off at the top here. So I'm not too worried about it, but we need to make sure that it's not making any more noise before we go and put it away so it'll be shelf stable. Alright, we are at temperature, and as you can see, the bubbling has slowed down significantly. All of the foam that was at the top is now settled to the bottom in that crusty form, which is fine because that will come out with when we strain it with the cloth. But we are still bubbling, so we're going to keep going. Alright, here we've got the jars sanitizing for the tallow. I've got 4 here. I've got one over there waiting to go in. I believe I'm only going to need 4, but I'm going to have the other one just in case. Once these are done, we'll take them out, make sure they're completely dry inside before we put any tallow in them, because we're trying to make sure that there's no water to keep it shelf stable. Alright, we're outside. We got our jars. They're all sanitized and dry. We've got this. There are bubbles, but there's no active bubbling, which is what we want. So I've got my metal mason jar funnel. I've got our, don't mind my feet. We've got our flour towel doubled up, layered up twice, and then we've got this little strainer that comes with the funnel. So we're gonna put that on each of these jars, get them filled up. Now, this is probably gonna be a little bit of a mess, so I'm gonna set you up on my little tripod and see what I can get for you. Sorry if it's not the greatest. So, here we go. All right, here we go. First, we're gonna turn this on. Scoot it back. We're doing this on the wood board because I haven't greased it in a long time, so anything that falls off will just be oil on the board, which is fine. Okay, so we got that. We got to dry the lids before we put the bread fork on. Here we go. Okay, with the lid. Put it on. Very hot. And go to the next one. obviously not enough for a full, but this stuff is like liquid gold, so I'm not about to waste that. Alright, so we've got them all jarred up. We're going to leave them be. We're going to take them inside, set them down, and we're not going to touch them. So they're going to go from this yellow tint color. It's going to dry, or it's going to harden pretty much clear white. So we'll see more of that in a little bit. But I'm going to use this towel to actually finish oiling up this board, just because, like I said, it hasn't been done in a long time. But this is what was left, so that's all that collagen and everything just burnt up. So I'm just going to put a bunch of water in this and put it back in the Instant Pot and let it kind of clean itself a little bit before I try and scrub it all up. I knew I wasn't going to use this, but I wanted to have it just in case, so that I didn't have to go and sanitize another jar in the whole middle of this. So easy peasy, let's get this inside and let them sit.